Daily Corvid, you're talking about America too much. Daily Corvid, you're talking about Donald Trump too much. Oh, weird liberals, we don't like Donald Trump. Donald Trump's evil. Donald Trump's a Nazi. Right. Let me talk to you about Donald Trump. Specifically, since he took office for his second term. These are the things he promised versus the things he's actually done. And how they affect us here, how they affect Canada, Australia, all the other countries which have all the whinging liberals. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this. So, to start with, let's go through his election promises, just in bullet point form, so we'll make it quick. He said he was going to pardon the Silk Road creator Ross Ulbricht for creating the dark web marketplace, where you could get things illegally, which the Biden administration had restricted. Now, you will be told this is things like weapons. America can already get weapons. That wasn't it, so that was propaganda. We're talking about things like generators. Things that preppers use. That was generally what the Silk Road website was for. Pardon that guy straight away. One election promise, completely passed, upheld, done. Well done, Donald Trump. Second election promise. He said, I'm going to create a new FBI-style counter-terrorism cyber policing unit, and I'm going to make sure it is headed by a red-blooded American. Done. 100% pass. He creates a new FBI-style cyber-terrorist desk, and he puts Ross, can't remember his name, there's a guy called Ross who does it, who is indeed a Christian, red-blooded American guy, who knows the threat of Islam and communism. Tick. 2 out of 2 so far. Third election promise. He said he was going to pardon all the individuals who turned up to support him in the freedom protest from last year, who Biden's administration was going to give life sentences to. Tick. Passed. 1,500 individuals who came out to protest against the destruction of free speech in support of Donald Trump. 100% pardons for them. 1,500 red-blooded Americans. Can you see a bit of a pattern developing here? Can you see how all these things that the liberals are whinging about, it's stuff that is rewarding Americans, rewarding people who respect the law and who respect the sovereignty of their own country, America. Note to self, how do we get this kind of guy in our country? How does Britain find a leader like this? How does America, Canada, Mexico, how do all these other nations with the whinging liberals, how do they achieve this kind of stuff? And it's only been 6 months. Remember, we're not even past 12 months of the new Trump regime yet. I'll carry on. He suspended aid to Ukraine until Zelensky wants for peace and stops talking about further war. A very unpopular move, you would have thought, and originally it was. But one of Trump's election promises was, I am going to enforce peace in Ukraine and Russia. Now, where is Zelensky? Well, he is just on the way back from Saudi Arabia, where he met Trump's envoy to the Middle East. And guess what? He is now just about to agree a slightly reduced but still a fairly generous peace deal. And because it has been amended, we now need to wait for Putin to sign the amendments. So we are one step nearer to peace in Ukraine. And in doing so, he has saved millions of dollars and probably lots and lots of lives. Now, the bad side to this, which I have to mention, is in any side of a war, when they see peace arriving, they rush to tie up those loose ends. And what that means is all their targets they haven't yet attacked, they're going to attack them now. This happens during any peace negotiation. So, Russia have been attacking Ukraine, and Ukraine have been attacking Russia. And lots of people have been dying, and this will continue up until this peace bargain is signed. But, would this have been happening if Zelensky, as he had agreed to, had signed Trump's original peace deal 2 weeks ago? I say probably not. There would probably have been a full ceasefire, and none of those guys would have had to die. So, one of Trump's election promises to suspend aid to Ukraine until they agree to peace is now fulfilled in full. That's 4 out of 4 so far. So I'm failing to see where all these complaints about Trump come from. Apart from, obviously, if you just don't like the guy. If you just don't like him personally. If you think, Trump's an arrogant guy, arrogant American. Fine, you don't like arrogant Americans. That's your personal issue with a guy you've never met. I am talking about policy here. I'm talking about physical things that have happened. Physical effects on the world that change things for the better. 4 out of 4. About to be 5 out of 5. The last one. This is the final election promise on my list. Cancelled Israeli sanctions and promised to support the IDF in full in their war against Syria, Iran, Jordan, Egypt and the Islamic jihadi nations. 100% pass. We know not only has Trump 100% backed the IDF and that has seen the tide of the war change, he has also removed all the sanctions on the settlers of Judea and Samaria, which we calling the West Bank. Let's get this straight. The West Bank is on the east side of Israel. Why do you think they want us all to call it the West Bank, even though it's in the east? It's because if you are Israel and you look east, this is the spot where they're talking about. So if you're calling it the West Bank, it means you're recognising this country here. What exists here, a mountainous desert, which is where the ISIS terrorists live. So calling it the West Bank is saying Israel is not the state we are recognising, the ISIS territory is the state we are recognising. That is why Trump doesn't say the West Bank unless he's talking to Arabs. He says Judea and Samaria, which is the historical name of these two places. Judea meaning the city of Jews, Samaria meaning the place where Samaritans gather, the well, described in the Bible. So tick. 5 out of 5 for Trump on election promises so far. Look, I don't know what to tell you if you don't like Trump. Starmer has a terrible record. None of his election promises were kept. He has rolled back every single one of them and is now travelling very quickly in the opposite direction. What about Trudeau? Oh, that's right. He's no longer in his office anymore. He got voted out and replaced by someone else. And you can see how that's going for them. They were so desperate to get rid of Trudeau that they grabbed the nearest person that was popular. And it turns out he is even worse. What about Macron? Macron is polling the lowest of his entire political career. He's virtually hated now. But he's still clinging on to power somehow. But Trump, his electorate love him. His polling has gone sky high. He's more popular than ever. I used to be an opponent of Trump. I think Trump's fucking fantastic now. That shows you how he has turned things around. How has he turned things around? By delivering his election promises, by speaking plainly and being straight down the line. Doesn't use all these big fancy words, and he's not afraid to call a spade and a pig. And that's exactly what he's done, and it's what we need. Let's hope and pray to God that Britain can have a leader like Trump and less like Starmer the commie, who has done nothing but destroy this country and invite jihadis to come and live here. Which, by the way, is going to be a problem in the very near future, but that's for another video. So that's his election promises. 5 out of 5 ticks, doing very well, polling massively highly now as a result, and America are looking pretty good for it. What about the things he hasn't done? Well, I wouldn't be a fair and non-biased commenter if I didn't go through the things which he has said, but which haven't been done yet. So, he said he was going to impose trade sanctions on Canada, Mexico, Australia and the UK if they didn't play ball in political terms and support his view of peace in the Middle East and peace in Ukraine. Now, you could say he has imposed these sanctions, and yes, all the other political commentators are saying he has imposed these sanctions, but they haven't read the actual document. Those sanctions don't come into force for 18 months. So that means now we have 18 months of hard-nosed, hardballing negotiations between those countries and America, and if and when they come to an agreement, those sanctions will be removed. As in, they won't apply to those countries who come to these agreements. So although that's still happening, that hasn't happened yet, I am pretty confident that these countries will eventually back down when they realise America for decades has been giving out free candy. That's what's been happening. That's why all these countries are going, oh, we're going to suffer so badly now. We're not going to get any more of our free candy that we do nothing for. What Trump is asking these countries to do is support their toughest and richest ally while they have their strongest and toughest president so they can get things done. And I say, let's support Trump and America from Britain. then we won't have these sanctions. The only reason these sanctions are happening is because Trump's trying to cause peace in the Middle East by removing the power of the jihadis, and trying to cause peace in Ukraine by removing the leaders, Putin and Zelensky. And if Britain doesn't want to back that idea, but then supports Zelensky instead, it causes a rift and it slows down the peace. So of course we're going to get sanctions after stupid Starmer decided he was going to speak out of one side of his mouth, produce his fancy letter from the king to Trump to try and beg for mercy from him, but then go straight home and get on his social media and say Trump's a maniac and he supports Zelensky. That's the reason those sanctions are right to do. Now look, I lose money from that happening, but it's not about me. That's the whole point in Trump's cabinet and the things that he's been doing. We as a population of humans, decent, intelligent people, we have to stop being so completely self-absorbed and selfish and saying me, now. All I care about is what I get today. That's the reason the world is in the state that it's in. So Trump is saying, let's look to the future and build something in the future where we all benefit from it, apart from jihadis and communists. Hallelujah! That sounds brilliant to me. I'm very, very supportive of that idea. So, 50% will give that one. He hasn't 100% come through with that, but it's looking like his strategy and his negotiation tactics will generate fruit. Impose blockades to immigrants. Deport millions of illegal migrants. Well, he has actually started doing that. So although this wasn't an election promise, it was something that he did mention in his election campaigns. He said he wanted to blockade the borders. Remember, build that wall. It was what he wanted to do in the first term. But the Democrats soon put paid to that with their control over Congress. They didn't allow it, and they sold his wall off to Mexicans for pennies on the dollar when it cost like $15 a meter or something like that. So they lost a lot of money through doing that. Now Trump has gone back to that plan, and he has backed it with military presence, military force. And what do we know? Suddenly Panama, Cuba, Mexico, all these countries' prime ministers and presidents are backing Trump. Plus they have stopped the flow of illegal migrants virtually overnight. It's gone close to zero, the lowest it's ever been. And in addition to that, he is deporting millions of illegals. Now, can you imagine? Just imagine how good Britain would look if Starmer shut the borders for a year and started deporting illegal Muslims. Started deporting anyone who showed support for jihadis, who went into colleges and set off bombs or turned up at a protest with their face covered shouting Free Palestine. If we were to deport all these guys, our economy would see a huge rise. Our infrastructure, our public services, our tax bill would go down a little tiny bit, but the rest of the costs of the NHS and the police and the education system would come right down, and that money would come back to us. So although he hasn't 100% fulfilled that yet, again, it's looking very good, and I support it. Anyone with sense should support that. This is the thing, right? These are common sense, basic, democratic things. Anyone with any sense should say these are good things for their country. The only person who is not going to like these are illegal immigrants, terrorists and jihadis, communists and other enemies of democracy. They're the only people who won't like this. So that lets you know when you see people whinging in the comments about these things being bad, that is them holding up a Palestine flag and saying they are a terrorist or a commie. And that is a person who wants to destroy you. So you better come around to the idea that these things, although they are not me, now, they're not going to benefit you today. Down the line in a few months or a year or 2 years, they will 100% benefit you. And the way they're going to do that is by removing your enemies and throwing them out the door, which is what we should be doing here. So 50% for the first two. So we get to the last few now, which I feel like these are the ones that this is why I left these till last. These are the points people are going to relate to and know the most about. So Trump proposed, he didn't make it an election promise, but he did propose that he was going to offer big tax cuts to the lowest, poorest people in society and the middle range, the middle class people. And he was going to increase medical benefits instead of having Medicaid. He's going to try and get rid of Medicaid, and he was going to have a different system which was part pay, part benefit. So this one's obviously not all that popular, and I have to say I'm not 100% sure this one is 100% correct. But all the same, it has already saved millions and millions of dollars for America, and that means the tax budget is going to have to come down. Well, it doesn't have to, it's just like one of his election promises was less tax. So now we know, because of that policy, even though it hasn't been 100% implemented, and it's certainly not 100% well liked, the tax bill for the 25% of the poorest Americans and 10% of the middle class is going to come down. Those people are going to pay less tax now and for the foreseeable future, which is being paid for by that removal of Medicaid's wasted money. Once again, it's common sense politics. Might not be universally liked, but that is the kind of politics which will create a long-term benefit. Starmer, I hope you're listening to this, you commie. So, a 30% tick for that. Now, Trump has directly set military teams against cartels invading at the border to try and mule drugs and human slaves, human trafficking, over the border of America. This has been immediately in effect. And not only that, he has designated Mexican cartels, Muslim jihadis, and Chinese communist agitators as terrorists. He has actually said these guys are now designated as officially terrorists. And that means anyone is allowed to try and make a citizen's arrest, or if you're not confident to, call the police and they will get an anti-terror squad with machine guns out to get these guys off the street immediately. That's brilliant. Can you imagine if that was here? Can you imagine here if you saw a bunch of jihadis, loitering around and looking really like they were going to do something, if you could just call the police and have them arrested by machine-gunned anti-terror squads? That would be a godsend. We have the opposite problem here, where the jihadis loitering around in groups, they can call the police on me for just walking past and praying or singing a Christian hymn. I'm not even kidding about that. People have been arrested in London for singing Christian hymns, walking around just wearing a cross like I'm doing, by groups of jihadis reporting them to the police. So this is something we definitely should copy. But it's only 50% done, so we'll give it 50%. And then the last one, this is the most important one. America has withdrawn from the UN Security Council, in part. It's still there, but they're saying we're going to pull out if you guys keep supporting terrorism. They've completely pulled out of the World Health Organization, i.e. the Chinese-controlled lobby, which was responsible for spreading COVID far and wide, and then forcing us all to be on lockdown for 3 years, and not supplying us with an actual solution, and then lying about it to cover it up, spending all our money, bankrupting half of the West. And America has pulled out of the UN Human Rights Council, which is a godsend because, as we know, human rights, in the eyes of the UN, is not something which is equally applied. I don't get the same human rights as an illegal immigrant jihadi supporting Muslim, for instance. They seem to get more than me. They get rich lawyers, they get free housing, and they get diplomatic immunity, whereas me, as a law-abiding, decent Christian and British citizen, gets sweet FA. That's the UNHCR that is responsible for that. So America has pulled out. It wasn't a campaign promise, but goddamn did that need to be done, and I 100% support that. And the last one has been Doge. Elon Musk. We have our own robot Doge. Yes. So the effect that this guy has had... Now, everyone knows I'm not a big fan of Musk at all. I'm a very, very staunch, long-time critic of Musk, and I do think the guy is a con artist and he is a stooge. But nonetheless, the actions of his Doge department, even on the surface, seem to be ruffling the right feathers in the American government. So now all these public servants, let's call them, who have been sitting at their desks doing nothing, letting crime after crime go and not issuing the justice which their jobs demand that they do, judges, police officers, FBI informants, these kind of people who should be doing work for their money, now they have to show the work that they've done, or if they cannot prove the work that they've done, they are going to owe refunds to the taxpayer. So, I think that's a pretty good report for the first 6 months of Trump's second term. Remember, he's hardly been there. He hasn't even been there a year. And so far, let's have a look at what he's done. He's created a precedent, not a president. He hasn't created a new president. He's created a precedent that terrorist organisations should immediately and completely be hated upon and attacked and never accepted. We should not negotiate with these guys. He has suggested that countries should look after their own populations first, not bring in immigrants that will vote for you and then look after those guys to keep yourself in power. That is communist corruption. And he has made it clear that even though not everything he does is going to be universally popular, his long-term vision as the leader of the country is going to be more important and more of a focus than the whinging liberals and their short-term me, nows. So in conclusion, dear ladies, gents and Pikachus, as a person who previously was not a big fan of Trump, I am a converted Trump supporter. If I was living in America, I would 100% vote for this guy. And even though, yes, he can be a bit narcissistic, he's a politician and he's a rich guy, you know, what do you expect? Out of all the politicians that I have had to endure and commentate on over the last 5 years, Donald Trump is the only one who actually comes through with the things that he promised. He's the only one who will forego being popular in order to get the right things going and get things done. And if we can find leaders like that in Europe, in Britain, Canada and Australia, then within a few short months we can turn this ship around and have it sailing back towards democracy, free speech and civil rights like it always was meant to be, and away from the clutches of the evil Chinese communists and the murdering, raping jihadis. And brothers and sisters, that will be the best thing for us all, now and in the long term. So I really hope that's what we see. So, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learnt something. God bless you all. And I'll see you lovely people with my very burnt fingers in the next one. Bye now. Honestly, hearing JD Vance say hope is not a strategy, and also saying judge a man by his actions, not what he says about what he does, was music to my ears. Finally, common sense has prevailed. So that's all for now. God bless you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.